good.
I am sitting in the right, okay.
All right, it's 5:30, so let's call the Coos Bay City Council work session, joint council urban renewal work session to order. Join me to pledge allegiance, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag
To the flag of the United States of America, which it stands, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, everyone. Welcome the ones that are here and the ones that are virtual. Hi, Patty, Nate, how are you doing? Okay. First item on the agenda this evening is public comment. We have one public comment, is that correct?
You have one that was submitted in writing, and it's there on your desk. It's actually going to be for the marijuana issue.
Okay. Anyone else like to come forth and make a comment on something that's not on the agenda this evening? Would be the time. Anyone? No public comments? Okay, we'll move forward. Review of the agenda for the upcoming joint work session. Discussing regarding development of the sports complex and Mingus Park ball field lease. Jim?
You bet. Thanks.
I think it's going to be a lot of you tonight.
So the Parks Commission has a couple of items they'd like to discuss with you tonight. One being a sports complex, that idea and potential locations for the sports complex. And then a proposal that's come before them regarding a private entity, in the case of Northwest Fitness, requesting the city lease them the Mingus Park ball fields for a private-public partnership proposal. So that's a lot of P's. Anyhow, Randy has a lot more details on that, but I thought we might talk about that and then transition into the complex discussion.
Okay. So, Randy, did you want to give us some more input on that, please?
Certainly. So we met with Henry Delaney here in January, and again in February. And his proposal is basically to convert that existing facility into a baseball or hardball complex to the fullest amount that we possibly can. So it would be expanding the current footprint of that facility by 8 feet or 80 feet. In other words, expanding the ball field back fence out 80 feet. That would encompass the tennis courts, taking them out in order to do that. He has proposed that all the improvements to the facility would be borne by his partnership with the city and ongoing maintenance to the facility. That's the proposal moving forward. So I'll leave that kind of in the braces of what we're talking in that one.
Okay, so would this be his solely, or would it be, I mean, don't we have other occupants that utilize that facility?
We have other uses to the facility, that's correct, we do. And we did share that with him, and that was one of the concerns of the sports, or the Parks Commission. His proposal would also look at what those uses are and incorporate them into his plan.
Okay. So we have okay, so we're going to discuss this item first, correct? All right, so so it's a joint session, so, and the Parks Commission, do we have someone that wants to speak on your behalf as far, or anyone, all of you can, how you feel about that? You asked for this joint session, so I'm interested on at least the Parks Commission's feel about this before the council jumps in.
Yes, Ariane has some comments she'll make, she's with us.
Okay. You're muted. You're muted.
I'm sorry, my audio just
There you
clicked
go.
on, so I missed what was just said.
You're on. We can hear you.
We can hear you now.
Randy said that you maybe had some comments that you wanted to say regarding the proposal for the ball field.
I think my overall comments were concerns about location and parking and the highest and best use for that particular site. I think those are my largest concerns. Primarily that most companies that sign a contract or sports teams that sign a contract tend to have minimum parking requirements in that, and I don't think that we would be able to meet that with parking lot and street parking in that location. Those are my primary concerns.
How much parking do we have?
I would say, I mean, without a firm count, I'm going to estimate and say about 75 to 80 for that parking lot. Generally, when you're talking this type of activity, when we're saying AAA, Major League Baseball, or an offspring of Major League that he's talking about, it's collegiate sports, it requires usually 200 to 500 stalls for parking because it can bring quite the venue to your area. I'm not certain that one ball field can handle the plate, especially in the condition that's in now. It would require major drainage work, some major work. But if he's got the dollars, he's interested in investing and partnering with us, for everybody to consider.
So you're saying one ball field could need 250 to 500 spots?
No, it could
But he's
not.
only putting one ball field there, correct?
Yeah, he's just wanting to use the one single ball field for tournament play.
Correct.
And like I say again, generally, you know, I can bring back at another meeting some history from other cities that will show you what those volumes can be. You're only one field. Typically, if you have like a 2-week tournament, you would rotate those fields in and out for your activities based on your tournament play. Whereas you would have one field here for that tournament. So you might get 1 or 2 games in 1 weekend there, and that would be about the max of it.
So so is there a restriction on this type of thing for the planning commission? Do we have a, like for, restaurants and retail, there's some kind of formula? Do we have something for that?
Yes, there's a formula that can predict, if you're talking, Mayor, about what benefits it would bring to the community and based in terms of tourism and dollars, you bet. I can get you lots of information to support that.
So so we're concerned about the parking. Is that correct from what I'm gathering from the Parks Commission? Is that correct?
Accessibility to, yeah.
Parking, accessibility, and if that location, a ball field is the highest and best use.
Well, okay, so do we have, it's a ball field now, right? I don't think that use is going to change it.
Softball field.
Oh, I see.
So,
Not a hard ball.
Oh, I see, hardball versus softball. I apologize. I'm not
No,
a
that's-
fan, obviously, or very adept in this. Okay.
so do they have a proposal, a written proposal with drawings that might show how that would be expanded? I'm just thinking if you're looking, 80 feet east, what happens towards, and I'm terrible at north, south, east, west, but there's a pathway that's down that side. It seems like that they would need a lot more space than just that tennis court area, which is underutilized.
Yeah, there is a packet and a proposal, Mayor, that he has put together, and we can share that with everybody. I can separate it and get it out to everyone. You're correct when you're saying limited space. And in those photos, you'll see what I mean. There'll be an existing footprint, and then you'll see how far out it expands out in order to meet those limits for that type of play.
Coco has her hand raised.
Pardon?
Coco has her hand raised.
Thank you. I'm not sure if you can hear me, but I mainly was concerned that the information we were given would remove 2 facilities that are already at Mingus Park for that particular location, and that's the tennis court and the skate park to make it a regulation ball field.
Well, I think the skate park's not involved in being removed. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So the tennis courts is part of it, and I can attest, I walk by there frequently, and that it's not used. Usually, it's only used by the skateboarders, to be truthful with you. So,
Bicycles.
Pardon?
I've seen bicycles in there too.
So,
But not the skate park.
yeah,
but-
I don't know. So is that's another concern, the park? I guess, so does the park commission, are they leaning that this is something they want to try to resolve and move forward with? Or are we looking at maybe not moving in that direction?
Well, and maybe just expanding on your question, how does this fit into your plan, which is very specific on the needs for that type of park?
Good question, and I'm glad you asked that one, because the master plan's coming for renewal, and actually, we have not met any one of these sports complex goals to expand them capacities. So taking this simple one does not meet that goal, and that is the drive for the Parks Commission.
I have a question related to numbers. So if we lease this out, he takes on the responsibility of maintaining the site. How much money does that save us? Much at all? Would that be an amount of money we could put back into parks so that we could do more work with the other parks we have?
Yeah, we have not sat down and worked those numbers yet. He's put together some, what I call cloud numbers, but we haven't really looked at what those actual costs would be.
Yeah, I was thinking of how much it saves us. How much do we
Oh,
currently
by
spend
taking
on?
that maintenance out of our pocket?
Yep,
Not really much.
yeah, I thought so.
You're tapped pretty heavy in that line item.
So I guess I'm unclear on the need for this, because we already have two baseball fields in the area, Marshfield and Clyde Allen, that are really good. And is he wanting to bring in a minor league baseball team? Because Major League Baseball just cut a bunch of minor league teams, just cut back on how many they have.
Yeah, that's the way it was presented. I mean, it's been my experience in the past in Bend and in Salem, and I used to recruit these hardball and softball tournaments for Salem. And it's a competitive bid market where you would go out to the east and bid these games and bring them back to your community. You invest $1.5 million just to bring 5 or 6 million to your community. It depends on the level that you're looking at trying to bring and what type of sport you're bringing to the area. It's always been development when you develop a club, a ball field club, which is a 5 hub, to make a multi-purpose. That way you get the best of all worlds, and those facilities don't sit 5 months out of use. So you can have another use using it, soccer, football, whatever that is.
Yeah, my other concern is that this would be eliminating the only slow pitch softball field in the area.
That is, yeah. Now, Henry did say that they could consider taking and putting base limits inside there. So if they build it out to the baseball fullest limit, which is like 400 and some odd feet on the baselines, they could do the ball fields with different base settings, 60, 70, 80. I can tell you from the experience, that's tough on kids who play, because where you put those bases in the ground, there's anchor plates and they wear, and people running down that baseball line can either trip and or slide and gouge themselves on those other settings. So that's the difference when you have a limited use, one field, and you're trying to make it uniform to everything.
Well, and also one of the more fun parts of slow pitch softball is hitting a home run, and you're not going to be able to do that with a 300-foot fence.
Well, you might hit somebody in the skate park.
So, back to Joe's question, and I would love to also hear from Bill, who I know has been involved in softball for quite a long time. What is the Parks Commission's thoughts on this? Are you supportive of it, or are you kind of like, we don't, going back and forth? Where do you sit?
Where do I stand on that? I was unable to make the first meeting he attended, but when he spoke the other day, I got some misgivings. One of the first ones, of course, it sounded like he was a person full of a lot of energy, somebody who probably get things done, but it sounds like the control he was wanting over that would be not very comfortable with me, because 55 years ago, that field was one of the few facilities, and it was used by the Little League at the time. There was no softball then. That was used by Little League at the time. It was Marshfield Baseball, and it was Legion. And trying to use that for those league, those things was kind of hard, but the people worked hard at it. I think where it stands right now, the fact that it's, I think, primarily for the adult softball recreation is where it needs to stay, not a baseball. It needs to stay there. And the adult softball has been working and letting it be used for Little League. We're talking about these tournaments, which Randy and I and other people on the board have been talking about with other things he'll talk about later. Little League's already got some tournaments going on, and it's not going to add a venue to me, it's going to take away two. And the other concern I have is extending that left field down 400 feet tells me we're going to be hitting some balls out there. They're going to go into the skateboard park, and it's an issue we dealt with when we first had the skateboard park, if you people remember that, the balls going, that'll be worse. Also, that means that's going to be balls going into the street. And we've got people going by because it's a park. It's not a, I don't think that's a good place for a baseball field. I really don't. The two things I have concern about is converting that to a baseball field big enough for Legion-type play, and also the idea of an organization like that that is going to oversee it when they are, you can tell that they've got a single focus in mind of what they want. That's the concerns I have on it. Yeah, and actually, as far as my background, I was league president of the softball league back in 1970, and when we were trying to get tournaments here, and we got the field upgraded, did a great job there. And I've gone from there to Little League and to softball, and getting all three of those those groups working together is hard sometimes, but I think to the credit of this community and the school districts, we've done a real good job. And I don't see this fitting into that cooperative kind of circumstance. I'm a little concerned about it.
So let me ask you, Parks Commission, is this the general feel of how, you feel? I mean, do you think that we should, we can talk about this as a council, but I think the council needs to get the direction that the Parks Commission is not in favor of this proposal. Is that correct?
That would
By
be,
all?
that would be-
Is this unanimous or split?
So, Randy,
No,
Kelly had us all do commissioner comments. Does everybody have those commissioner comments? Okay. I think it would be good for you guys to maybe read through those commissioner comments. I know I have mine here. I have some pros and some cons. But I worry about that public-private mesh and how that works on public land. So I have a lot of reservations personally, but I would like those commissioner comments to be forwarded.
Okay, we've
I
heard
would like to see them.
Yeah, there were, I don't know, probably, I think we received about 5 or 6 from
Okay.
the commission members. Not one, though, definitely said for or against, but did say pros, cons, but did not go one way or the other, saying definitely I'm against or definitely I'm for.
Well, I think if we could get a little direction, and if
I
it's,
would say, Mayor, for best perspective, they're looking at the Parks Master Plan and saying, we need to administer the plan as it was adopted and outlined. And
Okay.
certainly, this program would not be following that footprint. Now, let me just say this, if you had the 5 fields built, that would be a different story, where you could look at one use, lease that, and earn some funding off of it to help subsidize some other activities.
It just seems to me that really is not that big of a space
It's not.
for things that are flying around. You've got homes to one side, you've got a use where people may or may not be wearing helmets in another, and you've got business on the other side of the street. Your parking is primarily just in that area. So, I don't know,
Well, everybody
Like I
knows,
s- like I
everybody
said-
knows how far a softball will carry. Think about a hard ball.
yeah.
When you hit that, it's like a golf ball, it's gonna wanna carry, so.
And then my other concern was, when I looked at the master plan, and I looked specifically for Mingus Park, and I know that, as you confirmed, that a lot of the goals that were achieved, or that were anticipated for that 10-year plan had not been achieved. And we were talking, about expanding Mingus Park 57 acres? You're taking a piece right out of the middle of it that is for the public's use. to put it in private hands, and that concerns me. Although I think it's stellar that he stood up and said, hey, I'm willing to make this investment. I think that's important for our community, but I just don't think it's the right place or the right fit in that plan.
And that's where I think the commission, and y'all can either say yay or nay, but I think the drive where they were looking at is if we were in that mode for developing, and he's willing to bring dollars to the table, why not come to the table and help the city in this method, moving down the road in a vision to get there?
Well, I agree with Stephanie, but I mean, I'm intrigued by it, and I think it was admirable to have someone step forward and want to make an improvement and help with an attraction for tourism and, better a facility. But if the Parks Commission, which brings up some valid points, feels this way, I think that, it's, it's too bad that it doesn't sound like it's going to work. But I still think the council needs to weigh in this. So how about council? How do you feel? We've heard from Rob and Stephanie and myself, but Phil, Lucinda, Drew?
Well, go ahead, Lucinda.
I think it sounds intriguing, and I too thought about the economic dollars to the community. I agree. It doesn't seem like it's the right location, but I was wondering, has this gentleman reached out to Bacapa, because I think they really need help with their ballparks. I don't know if this fits, but I was wondering, do we know if he's reached out to them?
Yeah, I don't know that for sure. I can confirm that with Henry, though.
Okay, it just would be, I know that they are always looking for funding, and so if we could make that work, then it would be a win-win, a win for Bacapa. And then I don't know how many tournaments he was proposing a year, but that's those tournaments are a significant impact in terms of hotel dollars and people in our restaurants and things like that. So I'm intrigued by it, but I do agree that it's probably not the right location.
Phil?
Well, I'm not a fan of public-private partnerships when it comes to things like this, period. And then I really don't think that's a great location for that. I think the softball field needs to stay as a softball field the way it is. But, if he's willing to participate in the development of a true sports complex, we've got a great location for one of those. And that could be 4 or 5 fields and plenty of parking, and it'd be great to have a partner in developing it. I'm just not willing to sign over a piece of city property to somebody and let them run it and control it. I just don't like that.
Okay, Drew?
I like the idea of being able to generate some revenue to help the park section do more with what they've got. But on the other hand, I agree with what's been said so far, is that piece of land where it's at, I don't think is a useful spot for what is being suggested, to the point of using it as a tournament field. The practicality of having one field and trying to rotate it doesn't seem like a good idea, and the level of parking that's there, when we can also consider that there are at least, I think, 2 other organizations that have come to us to make multi-field complexes, which would be much more practical for tournaments. Selling off one field to try and use it for that purpose is wasted effort when there's opportunities in these other groups to participate and develop something that's a true sport complex.
Well, it seems like it's really overwhelming how people feel about this. And so I guess Randy or Roger, whoever is going to speak with Mr. Delaney, I would, just say that we feel there's some issues here that it just won't be the right location, that we appreciate it and would like to work with him maybe in a sports complex at Empire, or even suggest Bacapa, as Councilor DeNova suggested. But thank you so much. I mean, we do appreciate the citizens stepping forth and wanting to participate. Everyone is in agreement with that? Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah, I do want to interject just for a second. I think I was one of the people that was pushing for a joint meeting here. partially due to the fact that I thought this was an interesting offer
Yeah.
that the council should be aware of. But then also, it brought in a much larger discussion about the sports complex siting, that we are, as a commission, trying to find a location. And I thought that the council you might have some interesting input, so we don't go too far down one road or the other. So,
Well, that's what I was going to ask, is a complex like, something similar like this, something that the commission is looking at as far as that plan goes as well, that opportunity to expand? I mean, clearly, we've heard more than one or two times that we don't have enough ball fields in our area. I think that it's good that we keep that door open for a public-private partnership, and I think that that is important to relay to Mr. Delaney, because sometimes we don't see what's out there. That's why we have the commission and private entities that say, hey, this might be a possibility. We could make it pencil out or something. So
yeah, I think the opportunities are there. It's just siting becomes the issue. So.
Yeah, so that leads us into the next joint discussion is sports complex, and Councilor Kilmer has kicked it off. So, I mean, we've had a sports complex, a group come before us before and talked about it up behind Cascade Farms or the old Kmart site. Unfortunately, that just didn't seem to pencil out, work out, and move forward. And with all that being said, if I remember correctly, I know I supported it, and I thought it was great. And I'm interested to see how the Parks Commission feels. But just to lead into that a little bit, and I think, Randy, you were involved in that, the sports complex that they were talking about, and I think they were referencing Medford a lot in their discussions, there was quite an expense to the city that was attached to this complex that they had in Medford. Am I correct?
That's correct.
So I guess with that said, I don't know, no, I don't say I don't know. Nicole, you can jump in here and say I'm wrong, but I just don't think that we financially have the ability to operate this sports complex. So I think it would take a private partnership participation to make something like this work.
I agree.
Does our finance director agree with that?
I don't know a revenue source currently that would support that. It doesn't mean we can't be looking for one.
Correct. But do you remember the numbers on that by any chance, Randy?
Are you talking about the development of the complex?
Not just the development, it was the operational cost.
The operational? Yeah, I've got plenty of reference numbers. I mean, to give you a current number, I can go back a few years and recall what complexes cost back, say, 9 years ago.
Right.
To build it, about $1 million to $1.2 million per field. So a 5-hub, about $5.5 million. Operational cost, if you are running it as a multi-use facility, meaning year-round, you get to subsidize that because you do tournament play, so you eat some of those dollars back in your CAVI. But to operational, probably roughly about $800,000 a year.
Okay. So there's a rough idea, everyone, of what something like this would cost, and maybe there's, and Randy's very creative, so maybe there's some grant money out there.
Glad you asked, there are.
Yeah, that we could probably get to help participate in the building of it and the development of it. But the operational cost is something that I think that you need to look at some private partnership. Anyway, I'll let that be the starting point. So Park Commission would like to make some comments. Second of all, Phil, why don't you give us an idea what we've been talking about the location so everyone's aware of where we're at.
Well, we've briefly discussed, there's a parcel of land in the John Toppitz Park boundary at the north end of Norman Avenue, and it's a 25-acre parcel. And the initial discussion that Roger and I had was maybe we could put some ball fields there, and then the next idea that came up was, and I don't know if you're okay with me throwing out the whole plan.
You are. You're clear to go.
The next idea was perhaps we could put our new Coos Bay Library on that same parcel of land, along with an emergency type of facility for in case we have a natural disaster, we'd have, a large area there that's developed. So that's kind of where we are. We're thinking that, my thought was when that group came to us and said they wanted some land behind Cascade, they only wanted 5 acres. And I thought, well, if you can fit all of that into 5 acres and we've got 25 acres, and the library says they only need 2, then perhaps we could think bigger because we have 25 acres. So let's, maybe we can put more there and develop that site to suit a lot of different things that the city needs to accomplish. So that's kind of where we are now.
Does everyone know the location that Phil just talked about? So it's up by the Armory. So
Next to the Armory, yeah.
It's right there. Norman runs down into the Armory. And so if you go down there, there's a path that goes up into the park. So that it would be that area that wraps around behind the Armory.
It's not, Mayor Benetti, it's not the parcel that was just cleared off
No.
next on that corner.
It's not the corner. It's further down.
Further down.
Right. All right, so what's the Parks Commission feel about that as a sports complex?
Maybe I should share a little bit more that Council President Marler took the initiative and had a conversation with Margaret Toppitz, as they have, their family has a vested interest and a long history with the development of that park. And at one point, we actually thought that they had donated that parcel and it was deed restricted. And based off of, in substance, what we were told was that she actually likes the idea, although she's very adamant it needs a much bigger parking lot, which fits because if we had both complexes there, it would be a much larger parking lot that could benefit both uses. But she was quick to disclose that while they did give property to the park, it was not that parcel. And as it turns out, at least as we know it today, the city became the owner of that parcel when the city of Empire ceased to exist and became part of Coos Bay. We are doing a title search on that to make sure there are no deed restrictions, but it appears that it is an allowable use. There's many that believe that putting the library at that location will bring more people to the park. And of course, putting a sports complex by the library will bring more people to the library area. So we think those might be compatible uses and a good use of an area that's not being used now.
Yeah, so I need to kind of back up a little bit. I should say, since this is considered John Toppett's Park, even though it might not be all John Toppett's Park or donated, it's still being considered as a park out there. And so I guess we need to get your thoughts on both those projects, the sports complex and the library being there, since it would impact that park. And you're the Parks Commission. So.
Mm-hmm.
Comments?
Go
Anyone?
ahead,
Thoughts?
go ahead, Joe. I've already been talking about it, so you guys fire away.
Yeah, we get to hear from Carmen all the time, so.
For sure. We can share.
That's not a bad thing by any means, but
Oh, sure, Joe. Mayor.
Joe's right.
I think it's an intriguing proposal. I think tying a library services into a park space has had a lot of success in the past. So I think that there's some benefits to that, as well as exploring the balance between allowing a sports complex but preserving the natural park environment that we have at Empire Lakes, and seeing what the balance is between the two.
Uh-oh, we lost him. No?
I think she's still there. We were just putting
Bring it
up
up.
the.
So, okay, so the library, how about as a sport, integrating a sports complex? How do you feel about that?
I think that there's some possibilities there. I think preserving the balance of the natural park, which is what we have, and then looking at a true sports complex to see if it would work there is intriguing. And I think there's some possibilities there. I'm a big proponent of getting as much use as we can in the Empire Lakes property so that we can kind of mitigate some of the current issues that we're having out there. So I think increasing use in the park is important, but what that use looks like ball field wise, and my only concern is maintaining some of the natural aspects of the park, but I do think it's an intriguing proposal.
Okay. Patty?
As a matter of, if I could just insert one, just as a preliminary look, the land mass within that park boundary is about 140 acres, and so we're talking about 25. That's not counting the water portion, that's just counting the land mass. So we're not talking about a huge mass of that park, and the balance of that park, and in my conversations with Mrs. Toppitz, she expressed the same concern. She was interested in the balance of the park, you know, kind of remaining as a park use. You know, she said her husband, who had spent a lot of time and effort, you know, working on that park, his vision was to try to keep it as natural as possible, so that it could be enjoyed by people that wanted to walk the trails or have a picnic or whatever. But she really thought that this was an appropriate use and an appropriate location within the park for this type of thing. So I just kind of wanted to give you that perspective that there's a little over 140 acres of land mass total. And that does not count the portion that belongs to the community college, which borders the east side of the park. That's an additional, very large wooded portion that the college owns.
All right, and Patty, what's your thoughts on this? Are you still there?
Yeah, I think it's a good proposal. I think utilizing park space is important. I think that the support from the community for having it within an existing park space is beneficial, as well as not removing something additional from the tax rolls. I think there's a lot of pros involved in utilizing that space. Again, just my concern is the balance of the natural park versus the developed park space for this element. I'm intrigued by the idea of relocating the library into a park setting. I think that's a smart and a much more positive position for a library proposal.
Mayor, the library board actually had a discussion on this and keeping the park setting, and it is their wish to not infringe on the lake park, to keep a buffer along the edge there.
Okay. So, Rob sits on the library board, or yes, he sits on the library board. Sorry. So Parks, how about the rest of the Parks Commission? How do we feel about that? These two proposals, sports complex and the library being there?
Yeah, to echo everybody, I think that the limit of the balance between natural park and public use, you know, ball field kind of thing is important to maintain, especially such a beautiful area as John Toppitz Park and the lake and everything. But I do think that the library idea is really cool, because I think Empire especially could use that kind of positive thing in the area. Kind of goes beyond my Parks Commission role, but basically echoing what everybody said, natural limits and finding that balance, but I think it's a great idea.
Any comment is welcome, believe me, it's fun. And I just want to reiterate, or mention, I should say, if this happens to move forward in that direction, the Parks Commission is going to be very involved in this process. So it's important to kind of get your input up front, because it'll be something that you'll be dealing with. Others?
So this is Patty, and I support the ball field with the other comments that people have said, but this is just a random thought about the library, and as a taxpayer, I don't support another library being built. I would like to see Coos Bay and North Bend work together and create a library for the whole region. The North Bend Library is great. You could add on to it. You could do some collaborative work together as the two cities, and it would be a better use of our resources versus building another library. And I'm not so sure a library out there is the right location for a Coos Bay library. So that's a little bit random thought that probably other people don't support, but that's how I feel about the use of public resources. And at a time when things are so limited and we don't have money, I think we need to look and think outside the box at doing some things differently.
Okay. The others, Parks Commission's comments?
I agree that this is a better place. It probably would work a lot better.
For the sports complex?
Yeah.
And how do you feel about a library being there if it was to be sited there?
I don't have an opinion on that at the moment.
That's all right. Bill?
It's another part.
Bill?
Of course, I was really thinking more about the not just the sports fields, but the other activities that could be out there. There's the issue we had to face with whether anything besides skateboards could be on the skateboard parks. We need to find a place to put those, and that would be a great place. We were thinking about that. And when Randy talked about the library, as far as being a place to help get more revenue, more grants and so forth, I thought about it, that was a positive. Then as I thought about it, the only thing on the downside for me on that is how much walk-in do we get from downtown to a library that wouldn't? And hopefully the bus services that we have would be able to offset that. I think it still could be a good spot.
And you know, I think from what I've heard, their preference, the library board would like to have the library downtown, but it's just not feasible. They've been looking and searching for, well, 5 years that I've been on the council, this second time, and then prior to that. So, and their time frame is running out. That facility they're in is not going to last much longer. So
It's more central.
yeah. Okay, so Lucinda, how do you feel? Start with you on the council.
You know I have comments. So first, I want to thank Phil for all of his due diligence, and I think a ballpark is a great location in that area. I'm not in support of the library. It's not on the main thoroughfare. That area is not, and correct me if I'm wrong, Roger, it's not in the urban renewal district. And so I know we had planned to use urban renewal dollars to assist with the library. And I know, there's been different locations kicked around. And I would like the library located in a place in Empire that could really be a game changer for Empire and really be the start of more economic development. And while it's intriguing to consider putting it in a park, we're not going to achieve that. And I don't imagine that we'll see any additional development happening by tucking a library into a park-like setting.
Okay. Rest of the council?
I'll go.
Yes.
I would have to agree with Councilor DeNovo. I really do toss around in my head the fact that that is property that's already owned by the city. But again, I think she nailed it perfectly when she said she doesn't think it's going to be a game changer because it's not where it can actually make a change in some of the areas where we need them. But I am intrigued by and intrigue just takes time, and the library does not have time. We need to get on it if we're going to move forward. My question is, right now, those trails that are going through that property that we're talking about, that 25-acre property, they're just man-made trails. They're nothing improved.
That's correct.
So just a thought that something like a complex in that area may help, like a trailhead, where you could actually improve that natural area, keeping it natural, but it becomes like a trailhead where there's a facility to do that. So those are my thoughts.
Other council?
Mr. Mayor, can I ask a question? Can Roger answer that question for me? I believe that parcel of land is not in the urban renewal district. Is that correct?
You are correct. And if I may just go ahead and expand a little bit on the timeliness. One, it is not in the urban renewals as it currently sits. We would have to have discussions with our consultant to see what the ramifications or process is to expand the urban renewal zone there to encompass that area. So that's an unknown. Timeliness, I'll just share that we are running out of time, both process-wise and your plan to seek funds from the state. We received word last night that the state wants some information from us as to location and potential project costs so that they can get it before the legislature for an ask for partial of the funding. So we're quickly having to whittle down to, we have just a couple of choices.
Okay, so Patty, did you want to speak again? But Coco, we have some hands up here, right?
Yes, this is Coco Sutton, and I don't know a lot of intimate detail about the other locations we were discussing for the sports complex. But with respect to the park property that we already have, when I reviewed, I think going back to 1987, a lot of the proposals and previous master plans, I think the John Toppitz Park would be a good location for a multi-use sports complex, and that seems to be something that people have been requesting for some time, along with more trails for multi-use. And my question would be, if you put a library in that location with those other things, are we continuing not to meet those demands?
Good question. I mean, as Phil stated, I think there's enough property there to handle everything from, I saw the outlay, but you know, those are good points. Patty, did you get your comments in with your hand raised, or did you have another one? Yes. Oh, you're muted.
Can't hear you.
The other one I had was about Mingus, and
Okay.
I think that was covered.
Okay. All right. Other counselors, how do they feel about this?
I think Ariane has her hand
I
up.
have one,
Yes.
a couple additional comments. For one, of course, you know, as I speak in every meeting, I'm a big proponent of master plans. So clearly, whatever we do at Empire Lakes, I think requires a master plan of the entire park complex, with improvements that people have requested over the years, and fits with the upcoming parks master plan update that we're doing. In regards to the comments about the library, I actually probably would be the opposite of Patty and state that I would like to see 2 smaller libraries. I would like to see the old fire station location in Empire be a children's library with library service options, and then a smaller library closer to the downtown core, instead of trying to cram all of what we want library-wise into one location. I'd like to see it serving both of our core communities, downtown Coos Bay and the Empire District. But that's my 2 cents. I've not been involved in that board. I know it's a very complex issue, but I think a children's library would serve the Empire community well, and also be a much smaller complex out there. But those are my 2 cents.
All right.
Mayor, I don't know how deep you want to get into a library discussion, but that topic has came up in discussions before about having a satellite library out in Empire and maybe one in East Side. The problem comes with staffing and the cost to run that many places, and I don't believe, we don't have an old fire station in Empire that I'm aware of. The one that's out there is being utilized.
True. I mean, it doesn't mean that we couldn't do
for
something
now.
different, but I don't know. But I think the costs, I don't know, we haven't figured it out, so I don't know. But Rob addressed it. So how does the rest of the council feel about the library there? I mean, we're getting to a point that we have to kind of give direction on where we're going to go. And for number one, I think the library board is getting somewhat I'm just say frustrated probably. This is our, I don't know how many times we've discussed different locations, and the second of all, we're running out of time as far as trying to get a grant from the state to move forward on this, and then we got to put a bond out. So I mean, there's all these balls in the air right now. So
And didn't they put a lot of effort into location long before this?
Well, oh, yeah, prior to this?
Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, but we
So,
could,
and here we, you know, we go on their recommendation, and we settle basically on an area, and we keep coming back to the table. I think we need to rely on the steering committee that's really put the effort in.
well, it comes down to, I think, what's happened, and Councilor Marler, to all his credit, realized that the cost now is going to be quite an expense to us if we move it from the Ocean Boulevard site. You know, because you're looking at the Gussie project, which we don't even have right now. We have to go through, well, we'd have to go through condemnation, or what's the other term?
That's it, inverse.
But we'd have to take it, we have to go through condemnation, and we're looking at the cost of that, around $650,000. We're looking at the demolition of that, demolition. We're looking at $150,000 of the property next to it, and we're looking at the property behind it for another $250,000. So we're at $1 million before we even tear it down. So I think that's why Councilor Marler was trying to find a way that, to try to make this somewhat more palatable. So that's why that came about. Anyway, Carmen, I think you want to speak.
Yeah, all right, well, yeah. I just want to say I'm in support of a library in a park. I think it's a great setting for a library. I think that we have an opportunity to really transform Empire Lakes, John Toppett's Park, into the jewel of Empire, and I think that includes facilities that are not present at the moment, and that would give value to that area and bolster a more robust, user-friendly center for the Empire area. I think it's a beautiful setting. I realize it's not on the main thoroughfare in downtown Empire, but I think that it's not far off, and it could be done really well, with a nice approach into that whole parks complex, and that could be the gateway to the larger park, which is, of course, you know, a very large area, and it's the stepping stone into that experience. I also really love the fact that it's city-owned property, and the setting is quiet. I don't know, to me it makes a lot more sense than all the other sites that we've currently set. And just to also add in, this is why I was pushing for the Parks Commission to come and talk to the City Council, so that we had some guidance on what was happening on the city side of where opportunities might be to site said complex, because you know, John Toppett's Park was not what we were looking at when we were talking about siting ball field complexes. So I think it's really important that these separate commissions have some access to the council, so we can digest some ideas before we do get too far along, like what is happening with the library board. And I apologize to the library board for all the movement that we've had in our goals, but right now I think that the parks spot is the way to go. That's just my opinion.
And so for clarification for the Parks Commission, since they're here, so you understand where we have gone and where we've been, we really had no options except Empire. There was nothing downtown, as much as some of us on here would prefer. And some of us, to me, they really wanted it to be there, but there was no location. So we bought the piece of property next to the Chrysler dealership out there. And we have that, and because we weren't able to make any other options, and we thought we needed to move forward. And so we were able to purchase it at a good price. We put it back on the market because it was decided that trying to locate it at Gussie's, it was twofold. Number one, that is a facility that has been deteriorating, and also it was decided that would make more of an impact in Empire, as Councilor DeNovo mentioned, which is, I think, agreed by all of us here. The only thing that I think Councilor Marler was concerned about is the cost. But, you know, that if we're going to make an impact into Empire, you know, would that be the spot to do it? And I don't think anyone in this council disagrees with that, and it's still something that we need to contemplate. It's important, Because if we don't put the library there, then what are we gonna do with that location? And what's gonna happen to the Gus's facility, but deteriorate, and then what? And at some point in time, the city will end up with that problem. I can guarantee you that. Whatever it may be, we're gonna have to deal with it. So it was trying to be a little foresight and move forward with a project to make that happen and take care of an issue that needed to be done and cite something there that would be beneficial to the Empire community. And we have representatives from the Empire community, one being Councilor DeNovo and the other one being Councilor Kemmer. So their input, and their feelings about that are unique, and appreciate it. All right, Drew.
Hey, sorry, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I'll wait till after Drew
Okay,
speaks.
go Drew.
The ball field is an easy one. I do like that at John Toppett's Park. The library, I would also prefer at the park. I understand the want to use it as an economic driver somewhere on the main drag of Empire, but the primary functions of a library are education, inspiration, and recreation. So this is the most ideal location to facilitate those goals. It would be useful on a main drag to maybe change something, change the way it looks as an economic driver, but again, economic driver is not the function of the library. It's to assist the present generation, the elderly generation, and the future generation. And I believe this location and being adjacent to a sports complex would be the best use and best location for that function. As far as the cost and it not being in the urban renewal zone, that is true, that is a concern, but the scale of what we're looking at building in an area that's full of timber, timber sale could help offset and create revenue rather than draining the urban renewal fund. It could potentially drive up revenue that is there in its own right, and those urban renewal dollars could be used for other functions that support the Empire District. Those are my thoughts.
Lucinda.
Well, Councillor Farmer, that was well said, and I appreciate your comments. I still go back to the fact that, as Roger cited early, we have a really short timeline. We have volleyed back into a number of different locations. Yes, I know that a library is intended for education, but we don't have a lot of funds as a city, and I think we need to be really wise with the funds that we do have. So putting it at the Gussie's location, A, it is definitely on the main thoroughfare. B, the hollering place, the Confederated Tribes of the Coos, Lower Umpqua, and Siuslaw Indians will be developing that parcel of land. And if we really want Empire to get the facelift that we all want for it, putting it in a park-like setting off the main thoroughfare will not do anything to drive economic development for Empire. It will not change Empire from my perspective. And I just don't think we have time to take another look at a different location. We've got our lobbyists who we've been working with to put together, grant applications to the legislature. And while it is an intriguing idea, I think we're too far down the road to be making these changes.
I have another question as follow-up. Have we heard anything from the Empire Community Coalition, which is the business organization that really is supporting the Empire community, and they are doing all kinds of things to improve the look of Empire for that very reason of economic development? What you represent, Rob,
I serve on the Community Coalition of Empire as well, and unfortunately, most of our discussions on the library site have happened in executive sessions, so we have not had a discussion about a library being cited in Empire.
Okay. Another tidbit that we need to deal with. All right. Okay, so Rob, you're on the library board, and we haven't heard from you, and then we'll go to Phil.
Well, I agree with Stephanie and Lucinda. The Gussie site is the ideal location, and it's where I would prefer it to be. It's a matter of timing. For me, we don't have time. That site, the site doesn't belong to us, and we just don't have time to And I don't think this site is really looking into another site because we already own the property and it's just a matter of a different design. And also, because it's outside the urban renewal district, those urban renewal dollars can still be used to develop at the Gussie site, something else. So I just want to move forward, and I know the library board wants to move forward. I don't think they have a preference on a site, they just want a site.
So Nate, are you still on?
Yeah, I'm here.
Okay, so for Councilor Miles' question about time and not having the property, Gussie's property, so to go through condemnation, if we decided to say, okay, we're going to put the site there, we're going to go through condemnation, then we are going to be able to acquire that piece of property without, I mean, we'll get it, right? One way or the other, we'll be able to get it.
We'll have to pay for it, but yes, we'll get it. That's not I mean, I can't think of any reason why I wouldn't, because it's for a public use, and it really comes down in condemnation using eminent domain as to what's a reasonable compensation for the taking of the property.
So,
And that's what the litigation, if there's litigation, that's what the litigation's about.
right, so the litigation part, if it had to go to that, I mean, would that stall the development of this property?
I'd have to do a little more research, but my recollection when we last looked at this some years ago was that the city could actually take the property, and then the litigation over reasonable compensation would occur after that.
So the only thing that would be the litigation would for, not the development of the property or the taking of the property, would only be for what the value of the property was and what we would have to pay for it as an entity, the city, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So the true cost would then be unknown until the time litigation was complete after we had already invested in the library?
Correct.
That is correct also.
But the way it's done is through appraisals, and they can't just say it's worth whatever, an unknown amount. It's determined by values and through appraisals. Am I correct?
That is correct.
I mean, there's a value, there's a system determined.
Different appraisers can come up with different figures for the same property.
Correct. Okay. All right. So,
How quickly are appraisals done?
well, it doesn't matter.
Well, I think.
You take
Right,
the
go ahead.
well. I mean,
Something like that would be 6 to 8 weeks.
Yeah, but I mean, the point being is, what would happen if Nate, you need to jump in here if I'm wrong. So even if we come up with an appraisal that says it's worth X, doesn't mean that the owner will agree with that, and they'll go and get an appraisal that might be different than that. That's when you can end up litigation. So that time frame will continue on. But my point being is that Councilor Miles was concerned about the time frame. Well, I want to be honest that the time frame is not going to be an issue if we decide to go through the Gussie's property. You condemn it and you move forward. So, am I right?
Is that true even during COVID? Because I know that there are some significant changes to processes, at least on the residential side. I'm not sure on the commercial side, due to COVID restrictions.
For what, appraisals?
Yeah,
Not
there's
appraisals, but for
foreclosures.
condemnation and relinquishing properties.
That's focused more on foreclosures, but you have a point. I'd have to check on that one.
So we can get this information, but I mean, unless I'm missing something here, that would only determine the litigation part of it. It still wouldn't determine the actual taking of the property.
If they're open to reviewing that process and those cases, my understanding is with COVID is a lot of that those processes have been put on hold due to people working from home, due to backlogs, things like that. My concern is just how long truly would that process take?
I mean, the litigation. That's what it would
No,
be.
I think what she's saying is that.
How long would the process take until the property was in our hands so that we could move forward with a plan? Is that what you're saying?
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
Because the condemnation could, if that's put on hold, then that could take long, I guess.
I don't know what would be the time frame that would cause it to be any delay on the condemnation part. The litigation part and the determination of the value, but on the condemnation part, I just don't see what would stop it. Am I missing something?
I'm not sure.
Yes,
Yeah, this is Nate, if you may. The governor's issued some executive actions which have foreclosed or barred evictions, foreclosure actions, things like that. And I think that's what she's referring to is the effect that would have on an action to condemn the property here.
Okay.
That's something we'd have to check into. My gut tells me that those executive orders wouldn't apply to a condemnation proceeding, but I'd have to check on that.
Sure, I got you now. I understand. Okay, that clarifies it. All right, so Rob, does this change your mind at all?
Well, it's just makes me a little more frustrated because it was my understanding in our library meeting that we had that Gussie's was off the table. So our major discussion was about the Ocean Boulevard site and the Toppets Park site. So now we're backtracking again, and I think it's going to cause a whole lot more frustration among the board.
Well, I mean, I think if this wishes of the council, we can move forward and have Nate come back with the information about that site. But if that's not the case, there's no reason to have Nate look into it. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, I think, unless there's executive orders from the governor, it wouldn't prohibit us to acquiring that. Now, I'm not saying it might not cost us more than we anticipated or all that kind of thing, because that's an unknown. But anyway.
We can't take action tonight anyway, so I don't see the harm in Nate coming back to us.
That's true. The only problem is that we're running into a time problem here because we just got I think everyone got the email that you sent us from Pac West, our lobbyists, that are going after us, going forth to the state, and trying to get them to get a grant for the library. So, all right, so Phil, I think I know where you're at, but
I'm not a fan of eminent domain and condemnation unless it's absolutely necessary. My fear is that particular site, the other side could drag this thing out and it could get a very expensive legal battle and cost a lot of money in attorney's fees. We may end up having to go to court and have a jury trial and all that. I mean, you could really kick the can down the road and it gets very, very expensive. And I'm sensitive to what Rob is saying. The library board wants a decision that's, I think everybody on the council has an ideal spot that they'd rather the library be, and we can't have, and it could be 5 different spots, but we can't have any of those spots. I'm sensitive to what the library board said, and I'd rather have it downtown. But Roger can tell you I've spent many hours riding around downtown trying to find a spot. There's nothing, short of condemning property and taking it from people. We could do that downtown. I mean, there's areas within the urban renewal district that are not in the floodplain. There's not many, but there's a couple. I mean, so if we're going to resort to that, then there's a broader scope there. The pushback for the Ocean Boulevard site, I get it. And that's kind of why it just popped in my head that, perhaps maybe we should look at Toppets Park because a park setting might be a decent fit for a library. But I think because each one of us has an ideal site in our mind that we can't have, I think we need to make a decision, because the library board has been waiting for 5 years for this to move forward, and they deserve for it to move forward, and they deserve for us to make a decision. And that's just kind of where I'll leave it.
all right, so when's the time frame, Roger? By our next council meeting is sufficient or not?
Yeah, I'll need to talk to Annie to see if we can delay giving her information this week that she requested. And I think that if you waited till next week, it would give Nate a little bit of time to look at process to find out. I'm fearful that processes would take much longer than we anticipate.
Oh, I'm sure, I think the process will take longer, but I mean, I'm not sure how long. I guess I would like a clarification from Nate. How long would condemnation, to get the property, actually, how long it would take? and then the process is going to be longer. But I mean, that would be like something critical, you know, for all of us to understand. And so I think it'd be important for Nate to come back with that information.
Agreed. I think having a site identified before we make the ask of the legislature is going to be very, very important.
Yep.
They may be apt not to give us funding if we don't have the site nailed down.
Well, no, we need to, I think it would be an opportunity lost in multiple ways. It could be the difference between having a library or not having a new library. Because without that funding, I think it could be very difficult. That's going to be a big push to go out for a bond issue anyway. And so the smaller the amount of the bond is more probable of it passing. Okay, so if everyone's all right, we'll have Nate come back with the information that we need next council meeting. I would also suggest that we have the library board members of whatever they would like, because we need to make a decision, I believe, next council meeting. It needs to be decided, and we need to move forward, whatever that decision may be. Is everyone in agreement on the council with that? Sounds good. All right.
Isn't the library board invited to the next meeting to give presentations?
I believe they are.
Okay, well, good. Look, intuitive, aren't I? All right. Anyway, I want to thank the Parks Commission for this joint meeting. It was very enlightening and informative, and was helping us with direction, definitely on the ball field, and even your insight on the library was very interesting and good on all fronts. You're more than welcome to stay and give us more opinions and insight on the rest of our meeting. But if you don't want to, I totally understand that too. All right. Thank you so much, everybody. I'm going to grab a cup of coffee, and then we'll get back on to the regular
I don't think so.
Bill, you need a new sweatshirt. Bill, you need a new sweatshirt. You need a new sweatshirt.
So, my son keeps bending my ear about the trees around the swimming pool and how we need to cut a good many trees from around the pool. He told me something today, though, I didn't know. He said, the skimmer bucket, you have to
You can't say huskies without.
lift all those pine needles out by hand.
That's what I don't
Because there's so many trees.
That's the ocean boulder.
So his thought was, if we didn't have as much shade on the pool, we could save money and gas by not having to heat the water so much for those scientists. That's his thinking.
Oh yeah, there was like the old rodeo bar or whatever.
Yeah, it's what that was the last it's also a tight location. Like they need 2 acres for this.
Okay.
Yeah, because I feel like when we were talking about originally Parks and
we back on, Nicole?
Yes.
All right.
Is anybody else cold in here?
Yeah.
It's freezing.
All right, Lucinda, are you there?
That's why I've got hot coffee.
I think she'll be back soon. Okay, discussion regarding the urban renewal improvement grant request for 1127 South Broadway. Jim, are you handling this,
I've
or
got
Roger?
this. I've
Okay.
got it.
Okay.
Let me see if I can get up PowerPoint. It worked. So we're looking at 1127 South Broadway. The owner has submitted an improvement grant application for the repairs to the north and east building facade. The applicant's projects includes repairing water damage, sealing existing concrete, installing a vapor wrap on the north and east elevations, installing tongue and groove cedar hardy plank siding, replace 5 windows and 1 exterior door, and replace some exterior lighting and painting or applying stain and sealer.
And she actually got 3 bids?
She actually got 3 bids, it's hard
Wow.
to believe. So here's the east elevation, the north elevation as it exists today, and here's what's being proposed. So, like you said, they had 3 bids. The low bid came in at just over $58,000. The DAT did look at the project and had the following comments. The horizontal break between the upper portion and lower portion of the siding, that's this line here. They suggested that should be at the top of the windows and doors. The upper portion of the siding in cedar looks better using vertically placed siding. So the applicant asked, should it be vertical or horizontal? The DAT said vertical, with the lower portion using horizontal placed siding. The proposed door would work in either color, either brown or black matte. And outdoor lighting is necessary, and remove the existing diagonally placed signage at the top of the building. And then they also recommend that the applicant consider adding some tall plantings in the front of to visually enhance and create a feel of height. Specifically, 2 large plantings on either side of the front door. So next week, this will come to the Urban Renewal Agency for award.
Wonderful.
So did this go before the design review committee?
Yes.
Did they have any comments about it?
Yeah, those,
That was.
I gave the.
Oh,
those
my
last
God, I'm
5
sorry.
comments.
I'm looking through the applicant stuff there. Okay. Comments, anyone? How's everyone feel about this? Does everyone know where it's at? Okay.
I actually went down and looked at it today, and it'll be a nice improvement to the forward-looking building.
That area down there? Yeah.
Just noticing that building last week, so this is great to see it in the application process.
Well, it's pretty simple then if everyone, I mean, it's definitely an improvement, and they've gone through the process and met all the criteria, so.
What's the business? Is it Tom?
It has a steel shop down there.
Oh, it's the still shop.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
He's moved out of that.
No, I think it's gonna be a real estate, something around.
Yeah, some sort of,
Oh, okay. Yeah, the
something
new.
to do with real estate, mortgage.
Oh, okay.
Okay, so everyone's in
support.
agreement with this? I mean, we'll have to come back and, finalize everything at our next council meeting, but Stephanie will be handling that part. So. Anyway, I think it's nice, and it's new owners down there, and they're jumping in right off the bat and going to make an improvement. So that part of town gets a little bit of a facelift. And with the Star of Hope doing some work down there, and we also have the roofing. Help me. The red. Oh my gosh.
Rich Rayburn.
Thank you. Rich Rayburn is bought the property right behind it and is making a huge upgrade to that building. So that's where he's going to be located.
The
behind-
hydraulics building?
Behind Star of Hope, as you
Oh.
go in there. You go straight
Okay.
down the road, and the road's been upgraded and cleaned and fixed, and so, yeah.
I think it used to be the building that was used by Hostess for a wholesale food place.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
So, yeah, it's kind of nice to see something going on down there.
Do we know what Rich is proposing down there? Or what-
He's going to put his shop there.
He's gonna put his shop there.
And I would think, he talked to me at one time about, asking for some kind of grant or assistance, and so I don't know. I'm sure that something might be coming forward, but he's been moving forward and doing it as we speak, so. All right, next item is continued discussion of the Coos Bay Municipal Code on the indoor marijuana-related business regulations. And so is Carolyn on and going to handle this for us?
Yes, Carolyn's going to handle it, and I'm going to try to upload the PowerPoint once again.
Okay.
Good evening, counselors. How are you tonight?
Doing well.
Doing good.
Thank you.
Great. Glad you can hear me. This is your fourth work session to talk about the city's marijuana regulations. There's a variety of issues you discussed, but the primary issue is the fact that our codes require 1,000 feet between a marijuana business and any residential use or any residential zone in the city. There's some other issues as well, but this has really been a big focus from each of you. If you look at the maps that are identified on pages 4 through 8 of the PowerPoint, and I have to apologize, I can't see your screen on YouTube, but you'll see that in no area except for one small unit where there's a marijuana sales going on, Herbal Choices on First Street, all of these are really considered non-conforming because they are within 1,000 feet of residential uses and residential zones. Slide number 8 identifies all the different districts as well as the adjacent zoning and a discussion about areas within 1,000 feet or within 500 feet. And if you go down that chart on slide number 8, I'm not sure you're there, but you'll see again that the Herbal Choices is the only one that would not have an impact. There are some that would not be impactful. Well, actually, the others would not be impactful on residential zones if you went to 500 feet. However, it would limit you to the mixed-use projects that you could look at downtown because residential dwellings are typically a part of those. And if the 500-foot rule would be implemented, then that would inhibit residential uses there as part of mixed-use projects, and it would also inhibit the potential for medium-density projects that are allowed in all of these zones. And that's a big, that could be a big source of housing that you could potentially lose. On slide number 9, there's a little bit of a comparison between the state and city regulations. The state regulations don't have a requirement for recreational uses for there to be a buffer between residential uses and zones like the city's does. I think that City Manager Roger Craddock has referenced this a bit to you, that there was some discussion in the state regs when it was medical marijuana that was being discussed, but that provision does not apply for recreational uses. And these marijuana retailers are there for recreational uses. So I think in summary on this, if a buffer is to be retained, you will have a potential impact on future housing. And that's not really a good thing. The council has directed a lot of work towards housing and getting more housing into the city over the years. And this kind of would throw a wrench into it to have a restriction of a buffer. So going to slide number 11, what staff is recommending to you is that you provide some direction to the Planning Commission to take a look at this this reference to the use in any zone or any use, residential use within that 1,000 feet. I think that were they to take a look at it, they could advise you and give you their thoughts. They don't have the authority to take action on it. It would have to come back to you as a part of a public hearing. Our second recommendation is to ask the Planning Commission to look at a few other issues, clarify the definition of marijuana businesses. There's more than just retail that we look at. There's manufacturing. I know there's been discussion about growing. And there's also discussion that has come up in meetings past about the distance between marijuana businesses. And I think the Planning Commission would be in a good position to offer you some advisement. These pieces on slide number 12, I think these can wait a bit. These are not critical in the moment. We don't have folks banging on our doors looking for business licenses for marijuana retail uses. And that leads me to the last page of this PowerPoint, that you have to think about the moratorium that's been put on this to date. Right now, that's due to expire on March 31st. And if you're going to make any changes or ask the Planning Commission to take a look at this and advise you, you would have to extend that moratorium. The soonest I could get this to the Planning Commission with our other work priorities would be June. So that's pretty much where we're at. If there was a sense of urgency to just deal with that part of the code on slide number 11 that talks about residential uses, but not the zones, we could tag that on to our housing work, but that would come up probably in May. So you're not really looking at a whole lot of time change here. I don't have any other comments. If you have questions, I'd be happy to help you. I think that Roger can speak to the revenue that this brings into the city, and he may have a few other things that he might want to say. Thank you.
Yeah, Nicole can speak to the revenue, I guess, but we generate a little over $200,000 annually. And we received an email from Roger earlier this afternoon. I'm not sure if everyone got a chance to read through it, but basically it states that, and it reiterates what Carolyn has stated. And I think an option for us is that we have the Planning Commission do a public hearing and make a recommendation and have it come back to this council. I think that might be a prudent thing to do. After our last council meeting, there seemed to be a lot of views and opinions on where to go on this, and I think maybe they could come back with a recommendation if you're feeling that's the way we should go. So this would come back at our next council meeting, but if we did that, decided to do that, then we also need to extend our moratorium because it ends on March 31st. So how does the council feel? How would like to proceed? Thoughts on this one?
I agree.
Planning Commission?
Going to the Planning Commission, having the public hearing.
True.
Yep.
Extending our moratorium.
I think it's a good process. It's well thought out that this goes back. I do want to just make one comment. As the representative or the liaison to the Coos Bay Downtown Association, I chair the Economic Vitality Committee, which basically is there to fill downtown vacancies with viable and upper floor housing where appropriate. That's in their plan, while supporting existing businesses, and we will be discussing this at their next meeting. which is the third Monday of March. So I think it gives, if there's nobody knocking down the door, I think we need the time to send it back to the Planning Commission, but also gives the Coos Bay Downtown Association an opportunity to discuss this as well.
Okay, Rob?
I agree with everything that everyone said. I do have a question for Carolyn, though. On slide 10, potential outcome of retaining the buffer. It says any mixed-use project
Okay.
in down. Can you hear me?
You're very faint. I have you turned up as loud as I can go. But go ahead, I'll try.
It says any mixed-use project in the downtown area could be precluded from going forward if a buffer between the commercial and residential uses continues to be required. That wouldn't really affect development. This only affects if a marijuana business wants to move in, doesn't it?
I'm not able to hear you very well, but what I meant by that statement was if there is, for instance, an existing marijuana facility, a retailer, and someone comes in on property, say, within, 100 feet of that, which is what, 2 or 3 lots, and they wanted to do a mixed-use project, or they wanted to do a medium-density project, which is a higher density. I would have to go to Jim and say, hey, there's a marijuana retailer here, and if we accept this application, it's a little misleading because they're within 1,000 feet or 500 feet of a marijuana retailer. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. You either lose the marijuana revenue or you lose the potential for the housing.
I'm not sure I agree. Generally, once a use is permitted, it's grandfathered in and they can't be moved. Currently, I think state law does touch on the fact that once a marijuana location is cited, it doesn't preclude, let's say, a school from citing near there. That's, if it comes after the fact, then a school can be there. It doesn't require the marijuana shop to move. They just can't cite there if the school's already there.
So I had a follow-up question to that. Sorry for interrupting. So in the case where we do have a situation where there is a retail business and we have upper floor development for housing, and say that business decided to locate somewhere else, it's not the property that allows that. Another business would then be unable to site there if this moved forward. And then we did get a public comment, and several key pieces to that is that, about businesses siting close to each other. We're not in that business of regulating that particular thing. It's more of use and planning, correct?
Yes and no. Currently, I think the statute as written, and I gave you a little bit of history in my email, but if this had always been the case, the current land use, most of these current dispensaries wouldn't have been allowed to go where they are now. So they went in there before some of this changed. But currently, as it's written now, there is a buffer between the marijuana businesses. It wasn't, in my opinion, it wasn't for dispensaries. It was really for processors, manufacturers, and growers. But the way it got into the code, this is how it reads, and the very literal translation is as Carolyn puts it. They're not. You can't let it happen now.
So this really does need to get back to the Planning Commission.
I really support. I think Carolyn's got a great recommendation that it should go back to the Planning Commission and have them look through this and provide you some recommendations and a proposed ordinance change. I think you could very easily come back to the very next meeting, make that an official referral to them, and at the same time extend the moratorium.
So Lucinda, were you able to follow all that and hear that?
Well, it sounds like I was part of the problem. Nicole had to mute me, so I apologize. It sounds like I was giving some of that feedback. I guess I heard some of it, so maybe I'm repeating myself, or repeating some of the other counselor
It's all right.
comments. I thought when we went originally down this road, we were talking about specifically the downtown corridor, and we were going to grandfather those businesses in. Because we have already a requirement in place that says that marijuana dispensaries can't be 1,000 feet from residential areas, then the conversation was, why are we putting those people in a mixed-use area? And typically that's the low-income housing. Why don't they get the same standard? So I never thought of it from the perspective of, well, if we put this in place, now we can't have future development. I thought we were just talking about grandfathering in those businesses in the downtown corridor.
Roger?
Well, I think we can get the answer for you. Get Nate's legal opinion as to whether that would prohibit other developments. Right off the cuff, I don't believe it does.
Okay. So, Lucinda, are you in favor of this going to the planning commission and
Yes,
making this?
absolutely.
Okay. All right, so everyone's in favor of that, and I am too. And I think then we'll get some opinion from them. I think Carolyn's got a good suggestion, as Roger has stated, and we can get legal opinion from Nate. And so that we'll do. Also, we have a public comment, a written public comment before us that addresses some of the concerns that they have and their opinions on stuff. So we can make sure that gets to the planning commission also. Is that how it would go, Roger?
Yes.
Okay. So is there any other discussion on that? Okay. The other item is discussion regarding the additional funding request for the public infrastructure improvements at Coos Bay Village. Who's handling this, Roger?
I'll handle it.
Okay.
I'm going to go here from memory because Sheen's booting up here a little bit. But basically, the Coos Bay Urban Renewal Agency entered into a partnership or development agreement with the developers of Coos Bay Village, in which, in order to make this project feasible, the Urban Renewal Agency agreed to reimburse up to, and the current agreement is up to $2,050,000 for off-site public improvements. So basically it has to do, it could include storm drains, a wastewater main, street improvements to the Newmark, excuse me, not Newmark, but Hemlock and 101 intersection, which is, it's a rather vast one because we're relocating that intersection, adding signals and rail safety. When we entered into this agreement, it was a number of years ago, and you did so with the anticipation of, or at least some idea of what possible potential property taxes might be generated off this development. Since that time, the only thing that's really escalated is cost of doing developments and cost of doing those public improvements. Most recently, the bids were awarded for both the Hemlock intersection upgrades and then the required rail upgrades. Those projects all collectively, not counting other off-site improvements, is just about $2,500,000. So what you have before you is a request from the developer to increase our portion of that another $450,000, and he understands and believes that there will be additional change orders, as they are with most projects, and that he will have to bear those costs, anything above and beyond. In addition, I would share with you that they've already borne the expenses for the work on Greenwood. They did not seek reimbursement for that, including the public dock.
Oh, they did?
Yeah.
Okay. Which we, as an agency, I believe, and had agreed to award them those costs, or reimbursement for those costs, right?
Yeah, within the confines or of the $2,050,000, I will share with you financing-wise, which should be one of your questions I know some of you have already asked. Do we have capacity for such? What our finance director has provided us is that we actually went out for a loan to undertake this project and a number of other street related improvements. Some of those included streetscapes, which we haven't undertaken. We have underspent that fund at this point in time and have more than enough capacity to do this request. As far as my thoughts on future property tax revenues, just given the fact that the cost of development has skyrocketed, you will see additional property tax revenues off this development.
That was my question.
Plus interest rates, we redid the interest rates, which also gave us a more income or more dollars to work with, I should say, right? So we're thinking about another 500,000?
450.
450.
So it would be not to exceed $2,500,000 in total.
All right, so council, I think you got the gist of it and the information, just is what you believe in it. Carmen?
I just gotta say that I might have a conflict of interest as a tenant of Coos Bay Village in the discussion matters.
So Nate, you want to weigh in on this? Does Carmen is he
Yeah,
excluded from?
yes, Roger and I talked about this a little bit, although he may well have an indirect influence. He does not have a direct financial interest in this. I think it's a potential conflict. As such, just, I mean, obviously, you've mentioned it. I think it's an appropriate thing to mention it, but it doesn't prohibit you from entering into the discussions or voting on anything having to do with this.
Okay, so you can weigh in if you'd like.
Okay.
All right. So how does the rest of the council feel? Lucinda, how do you feel, everyone?
I'm in support of it. Roger, can you just clarify for me though, really the funds will be used for railroad construction and the signal, is that correct?
Correct, as well as Front Street.
Okay.
So it's those public improvements in that area is what we've been giving reimbursement for, and then of course associated engineering and inspection costs that are generally associated with public improvements.
And forgive me, I always ask the same question, but does the port bear any expense because they are the owners of the railroad?
They do not.
Okay, thank you.
Which I think has escalated the cost, is the rail and rail crossing.
Yeah, the rail safety improvements is just a little north of $1 million.
Have we reached out to them? I mean, I know we have in the past on this and other projects, but now with the Georgia Pacific property having been sold and will be developed, that rail piece is a critical component of why that piece was purchased. It may be to their benefit to assist us with this project because they need to have rail service down there.
We have attempted, and their response back is that improvements to that section may be needed in years to come, but it's not the most important improvement being needed, and they could continue to work for several years without doing any improvements. Therefore, they're redirecting their funds to other places. We've discussed this with them for, it seems like 2 to 3 years, and they're very adamant that they're not going to contribute.
I understand that. I'm just saying that has it been discussed since this has been made public that that Georgia Pacific property has sold?
It has not.
And I inquired out of curiosity, and the rail and the port are the reason that the determination was made to purchase that property, clean it up, and put it back into use. Those were key pieces to that, so maybe
I would
it's
be
worth,
more than happy to have that discussion again with the port CEO before your meeting next week.
I mean, I obviously think that this benefits not just the village project, but our Front Street development, the History Museum, and just improving that area in general. So I think I would be supportive of it. but that was just a thought I had.
Nope, I agree. I mean, it's absolutely, I mean, I think most of us agree with that.
So I have a question. Was the intent of the original, was the intent of this, the Urban Renewal Agency, the whole time to pay for 100% of the traffic light and the rail signal?
It was assumed at the time we entered the agreement that the amount that you originally approved would cover more than the intersection and the rail improvements. The original estimate, or the original agreement was based off a forecast of property tax revenues for a 10-year period. Just as the estimates for the work being done is no longer accurate with those first estimates. In my discussion with the county assessor, so are the estimates for the property tax revenues. They'll be much higher than we originally estimated.
Yeah, and I think it's important that the public understands when they hear this, that, this was intended and is intended to help public access to that area, and not just for the Coos Bay Village.
No, I agree, and that's why I asked the question, because I think we should honor our original intentions.
Yep.
For sure.
I totally agree. And then, the other thing is that Roger mentioned is that we were going to reimburse them for fixing up the Greenwood access and that dock facility, which is going to be public. They have not asked for reimbursement on that, which was going to be around $400,000. So in my mind, it's just we're shifting the dollars from the Greenwood reimbursement back over to this area. And so I don't think, truthfully, we're talking anymore, right? Or am I wrong?
The $2,050,000 actually included the Greenwood, and they made a calculated decision not to go after those reimbursements. One, they knew that costs were escalating on the other part of the project. Secondly, it would have caused them some delays to go through our required procurement process for those improvements on Greenwood.
Okay.
But they are considering or actually doing some improvements that will improve public access on the waterfront side as well.
Yep.
And that's not, at our expense.
No, I mean, I think through the planning commission recommendations and citing and whatever an agreement, it's going to be an 8-foot or 10-foot walkway.
14.
Actually, it's 14.
14 foot.
Okay, 14-foot, even better. Boardwalk there. So.
And I want to say it's 1,700 linear feet or something like that.
Yeah. No, I think it's a great project, and I'm glad that we're able to help develop that area for not just them, but Front Street and the museum, and so it all ties together. Does everyone in agreement with moving forward with this then? I mean, Lucinda stated her opinion, but anyone else?
I agree with moving forward with it. It sounds like the funds are there. And Nicole's clever accounting gave us some additional funds we can spend towards this, so that's
Exactly.
very good. I agree with Stephanie. It would be nice to see the port pay for some of the improvements that have occurred within the city limits to their rail, but whether they're willing to pay up to that or not, it needs to happen. It benefits the city, and yeah, I agree with it.
And I also, Roger, I guess since we're going to ask support to maybe participate in that we are going to be doing a Front Street redesign, and the rail is there, and there's going to be some, expected participation on their part. In fact, I think it's going to be needed. It's not
necessary,
even. Yeah, so maybe you just make them aware of that, I guess.
I'll remind them. I think they have someone assigned to it.
Okay. Anyone else on this item? Okay, and then any comments by anyone?
I have a comment.
Yes.
I just want to wish my condolences and best wishes to the family of Bob Anthony on his recent passing. Bob was a firefighter, a volunteer firefighter back when my dad was, and he was a mentor to many of the most recent firefighters in Coos Bay, including my brother. In the 40-plus years I know him, I never saw him without a smile on his face.
Nice.
And I think my brother referred to him as one of his heroes and one cool dude, so he will be missed.
Nice comments, Rob. Anyone else? I just want to make sure that at our next meeting that we have some input from the Empire Association, Downtown Association on the library siting, Gussie's or the park. Rob, if you want to reach out, or we can have staff
Yeah, I
reach
can do
out.
that.
But I think it's important that we get some kind of feedback from them. All right, Lucinda, anything from virtual?
Good to see you.
No, I guess I just want to thank the council and the staff. I am sorry that I have been unavailable the last couple months. As many of you know, my husband was diagnosed with stage 4 cancer. And so I am home taking care of him. And I just wanted to take this opportunity to thank the staff for all the wonderful cards he received. He was incredibly touched, and I know all of you counselors also sent cards. So thank you so much for keeping him in your thoughts. And I look forward to our next meeting and being more involved in council activities again. So thank you.
Well, whatever part you can participate, believe me. And you have counselors that will say, well, Counselor DeNovo, you're here in spirit, believe me, because I know Stephanie said, well, I think Counselor DeNovo needs to be considered, we need to consider her thoughts here, right? So you are always in our spirits, and you take care of yourself and Don, all right?
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right, anyone else? If not, we'll adjourn this work session, and everyone have a good evening, and we'll see you next Tuesday, or sooner, whichever. All right, thanks.